Don't dislocate your arm patting yourself on the back.
Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Darksiders 3 Apocalyptic difficulty video walkthrough. This video is going to be covering the Scar and the Grock, and the beginning of it doesn't have any audio, hence why we're hearing the wonderfully spooky music. But we have the Stasis Hollow now, which is my favourite navigational hollow because I think it does really cool stuff. Because it enables Fury to walk on water, which I think is super cool. And it's utilising some really interesting puzzles. I think it's simple, it's subtle, and it's really, really cool. However, it also gives Fury access to some really powerful and really capable tools. Be careful of this corner, here's the cheap hit. He always does that guy, he loves it. So the weapon that she has with this particular form, when you hit enemies with it, it will slow them down. If you hit them a bunch, it slows them a decent amount. I'm not going to be showcasing it too much because I didn't really have a need for it, but it's a really, really cool tool. And coming up this room here is my least favourite room in this run back. Because there's two fire guys that have got really good accuracy with throwing bullshit at you, and the camera's fucking awful because it puts you on the high ground, so all you get to do is stare at Furry's back. Furry's back? She's not a furry, she's Fury, right? There we go. Stand up random person's back, you know? Because of course a Horseman of the Apocalypse is a random person. No, that's just not how this works. Sonic Fox is fighting in the lava and we're staring at his back. No, there's just two guys in here and I died in this room because I'm stupid. So it's a room that I remember for wrong reasons. Don't die in it, don't be like me. All we're doing right now is completing our journey out of this area to link back to the rest of the game. Because we need to now go up that elevator that was at the top of that shaft with those two scary black enemies who attack you at the same time. And I'm not going to show you me killing them because I killed them by isolating them and looping them. And I did it really early game to get their resource, off camera of course. But just run past them guys if you're having trouble. You don't have to fight them and you don't need to fight them either. Because we're going to be going to an area that we haven't been to yet, which is a very Darksiders area if you ask me. It just has all of the tropes of the classic Darksiders style. And there's an area in Darksiders 1 that looks just like it. It's the sandy, dusty area that you go to. And I believe there's a couple areas in Darksiders 2 that look a little bit like it too. But here is that enemy that I mentioned that is an homage to the guy in the second game, the big shield fella. And they do good damage too, so you want to be really careful. The reason I'm doing this is because this is going to be worth a lot of orbs. So you want to try and break that if you can. Like, did you see that gave me 5,000 orbs? I'd have to kill 5 million enemies to get 5,000 orbs. That's the reason why killing the enemies is pointless and picking that shit up is really powerful. So do that, then stay safe, and then swap to your Lightning Hollow and use the up vent. I wish there was more use for this ability. Like, how fucking dumb was that? Why doesn't she grab the ledge? Why didn't they learn to grab ledges in Horseman Academy or whatever? Like, I just don't understand. No thrust? Interesting. Oh, there it was. He did it afterwards. I do think that the side weapon for the lightning form is really cool. You can do some interesting stuff when you jump with it. You can throw the lance into the ground and come down on it and all kinds of fun stuff, but once again, the utility of it is iffy because the amount of times you get hit when you try and do it is kind of off the charts. Another thing here as well, do you know what I would have liked to have seen on these particular moments? I would have loved there to be a moment where when you're climbing something like this, it turns out to be the encrusted back of some kind of huge serpent. It would have just made the level design that little bit more interesting. You know, you get used to going up these rock faces that don't mean much, and then one part of the game, everyone that you climb is like a different family of lizards moving across a landscape to help you get to different areas. You could have even used food as bait to make them move to where you want them to move to so you can climb across their bodies to get to where you need to be. I was having a bit of problem with the glaive on this part. You'll notice I didn't power it up just then, that's why it didn't break them. And then on the next one, I only break one of them and it's a multi-hit. So it doesn't work correctly for some reason. Oh no, it did, thankfully. I just remember throwing it up and being like, why didn't that work? But sometimes if you don't hold the trigger long enough to charge it up, it doesn't do anything. And I'm really bad for that sometimes, I'm very impatient. But if you recognise this room, you've been exploring off camera like I have, because this is a place that I've already been in and stole all the goodies. Because I believe this leads to the crossroads, and then from the crossroads we can go to where we need to be, which is the area that leads to the Scar. And I'm hoping when I hit the Vulgrim point, you're going to get audio back, because I believe that's where the session from yesterday began. So, boom, there it was. Thankfully, guys, we now have a functioning walkthrough. It took a while, but we're finally there. And there you go, there's my stats for anybody that's interested. I have 7 luminous visages. I am level, 40 odd. Dumping some souls into Vulgrim. This is just to give you a baseline of where I am and where you want to be if you want to follow my strategies. I even showed you each of the upgrades on the items that go into my weapons for you to see, so it gives you an idea of what I'm doing. It's all very achievable. You can do the exact same if you follow what I've been doing. This is where the 2 black enemies will ambush you if you haven't killed them, but just run past them if need be. You could even go into Stasis Hollow, activate the invincibility, and then run up to the area that you need to go to. It's entirely up to you. Oh, and another thing, if I haven't mentioned it, but I think I have, if you charge the crossblade up and you throw it at the cars, it blows them up. And it's cool, but it doesn't give you any souls, which is bullshit. I was hoping it'd give you like 100 souls, you could just farm cars. I mean, what game makes you farm cars, right? That would be the ultimate video game. That's a lie, right? I remember Grand Theft Auto back in the day on the PlayStation 1. There was a dude by the docks who would crush the cars and give you a benefit for doing it, and I just used to steal cars and drive them there and have him crush them. So technically, I've already farmed cars, but still, I like the idea we're going forward with it. But jump into the lake, use the ability to sink to the bottom, and then continue onwards. If you're wanting to know as well how you go back to normal Fury instead of having a Hollow equipped, I think all you do is you hold left bumper. It might be different on other controls. I wish you could mess with the controls more than you can. It really bugs me that you can't. There's so many accessibility features in this game that should be there but aren't, which are kind of frustrating. Like, I don't want to press right bumper to dodge. I don't think right bumper's ever been a good button for dodges, and every game that's used it has been something that's pissed me off until I've got used to it. So the puzzles in this area, guys, are all pretty much the same. They involve charging up the glaive to knock these machines around and then swinging on them. And then later on you have to freeze these machines to stop them in the correct location so that you can get to the area that you want to get to. So there's a lot of throwing the glaive to freeze things and power things and things of that nature. But you'll also notice a lot of the enemies here look like the classic enemies from Darksiders. They look like those first few enemies that you fought in that game, and I really like that. Because they all seem to be demon-esque with wings and horns and, very traditional, very biblical-looking creatures. And I can get behind that. As I was saying, though, there's a few things I would have liked to have changed, but you can't change. I would have loved to have changed the dodge button because it pissed me off something fierce. I would have loved to have been able to change the sprint button because I don't like clicking left stick for sprinting in a game that's like a Souls game. I would have preferred to have B to do the roll, and I would have preferred to have hold B to do the run. Because if you're going to rip off a Souls game, at least rip the fucking controls off, right? So that I can have all the hundreds and thousands of hours of muscle memory come to something useful. And there are times in this game, guys, where I press B to dodge, because I'm in such a... I've got so much Souls programming. When this game starts trying to be Souls and doing Souls things, that's all I want to do. Oh, and just then... There's a mechanic that you just saw then that you might not have been aware of. The game doesn't explain it. And if the game did explain it, I missed it. Basically, that pool that I was on wasn't water, it was oil. And when I jumped up above it, I set it on fire. And I think it's an ambient design to show you that that's how that can work, so that later on you can use it. This bit's kind of strange. Did you notice how I'm having a problem locking onto both of them at the same time? For no good reason other than the direction. You're going to see a couple of crossfades on these moments where I stand on these platforms and I throw this crossblade. And the reason that there's going to be those fades is that my controller drifts. And there are times when I aim that weapon, when I'm aiming it, my character's moving. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens sometimes. So on the ones coming up, I fall off about 4 or 5 times. Like there was a transition just then. And I did that, guys, because I fell off twice, because while I was trying to aim, because you have to go really close to the edge to make it detect both of those purple amulets. And when I was doing it, she just fucking walks off. And I must admit, I was getting quite mad with this game, so I I was really, really close a couple of times to getting mad physical with my controller. And I wouldn't have lost anything when you think about it, because the controller I thought was dead for years. And the fact that it's still alive is a miracle. So I wouldn't have felt bad if I'd have shattered it, but I wanted to. A couple of times. During the Lust fight and during a couple of these puzzles, I got super pissed off at the controller. I really did. But this is a really cool feature here. I love the idea of standing on the water and using the water to your advantage with the Stasis Hollow. Really, really cool. Once again, I wish there was more to it, because it's such an interesting thing, and I wish you didn't get it last, but at the same time, the ability that they gave this mode, if you got this any earlier, this game would be boring to watch, because there's so many people that just go to it and just spam their way through the bosses, and it's really disappointing to watch. How do you feel about that, guys? Obviously, right, I have to say this because people don't seem to understand. When you play a game, do whatever the fuck you want to do to win. That's what video games are about. Play it how you play it. If anybody doesn't like the way you play it, fuck them, enjoy yourself. That's the point, right? You paid your money, you do what you want. That's a fundamental truth of playing a game, of doing anything, really. As long as you're having a good time and you're not hurting anybody else, just kick ass and do whatever it is that you're doing. Where I draw a line is when you put videos on the internet. If you make videos and you put them on the internet for other people to watch, that's where it changes. Playing in the dirtiest, cheesiest, most bullshit manner that isn't good to watch and that isn't interesting and that doesn't really help anything or doesn't do any kind of purpose of what it's supposed to do, that's when things should change. When you're playing for an audience, you have to go against what you necessarily want and do what you think is best for them. When I make walkthroughs, I try to do things in them that I think will translate to the most people and will enable people to have success, and that generally doesn't involve me showing you how to dodge perfectly for 20 minutes and showing off and being an expert player and everything, because you can't learn from that. I've got videos where that happens, because that's cool to watch as well, like mastery of something and supreme skill, but that doesn't help for a walkthrough. Walkthroughs have to be, by their own definition, more accessible, or they're not good walkthroughs, and that's the tightrope that you walk. So, the reason that I only have 1 HP now is because I want to make sure that I don't have more HP than you, and my strategy revolves around me having more life than you do. That wouldn't help you. It's the same with the skills. The reason why I'm not using all these super powerful abilities like invincibility all the time is because if you don't have it, you can't follow my strategy. So I'm using them fleetingly and using them in situations that give me an advantage when I need to, but I'm not relying on them because it doesn't correlate as good strategies. So when you watch somebody else play the game and they're doing all these things and you're sitting there watching like, this isn't fun to watch, this isn't helping me, this just looks like somebody banging their face against the controller, I always wonder, what do you think they're trying to convey with that video? Do you think they just like making videos and they're putting it up and they're having fun with it, so you should probably be less critical? Perhaps. Maybe that's what it is. But to me, I always feel like people should aspire to do better if the whole point of their video is to entertain. Like, if your video is meant to entertain, it should be entertaining. And I understand that that's a subjective thing, but you watch these videos, especially these walkthroughs that are just playthroughs, that are mislabeled and mistitled, that every single YouTuber does to get easy views, and you're sitting there just thinking like, how is this a walkthrough when you don't know where you're fucking going? Like, I've never understood that, and I never will. And the biggest walkthrough channels on YouTube do this, where essentially their blind playthrough is labelled as a walkthrough, and it's just somebody completely misunderstanding the game, using none of the things that make the game interesting, and fundamentally being quite disappointing to watch, unless you like the person. I believe a lot of these channels are as big and as strong as they are because the people that watch them enjoy the person that makes the stuff. So it's less about what they do with the game, and more about just spending time with the YouTuber of choice. And that makes perfect sense. As we spin the wheel again. So this is a wheel that you have to spin and then freeze. And if done correctly, you can stop it so that you can swing across this gap coming up. But watch out for the transitions here, because there's probably going to be a transition where I fell off the edge. Happens all... Oh, there was one. Kept it in, though. I don't know why. Maybe to show you the bullshit. There is no planet in this solar system that I would have walked off that edge. Just doesn't happen. When I'm aiming the glaive like that, I'm not touching that analog. The analog did that by itself. If I was Darkside Phil right now, you could both laugh at me and call me a liar, but why would I fall off the edge? You know, it makes no fucking sense, and it happened more than once. That's why there was a transition just then. So yeah, I kept it in for posterity to show you that, you know, This is shit that happens sometimes, you know? You've just got to kind of get on with it. And it's really funny because not only did I try hooking up a DualShock, but then the USB just wouldn't work and wouldn't detect it at all, even with all the software. I tried hooking up an Xbox One controller, which is bullshit because they should just hook up perfectly, but they don't. I was even looking into trying to hook up my Wii U controller because I really didn't want to make this walkthrough with this controller. It got really dark. It was a dark moment. And I knew immediately because I started playing and I got to the first boss and the controller was pissing me off. And when a controller's pissing me off, I'm already pissed off to begin with. So when you have that extra measurement of pissing offness and then the game starts pissing you off, like at that point, if I had a gun, there would have been no school left in this area undecimated because that's just how you feel. You feel like they're just the worst human being. You really do. It's just terrible. Absolutely terrible. Speaking of terrible, this area is really, really dense with these dudes, and these dudes can kill you in one hit, so be very careful. The guy throwing the spears is a pussy and annoying, and he just runs away from you, so make sure you get rid of him first. But the guy behind me is the real problem. If he hits me with his charge move, I'm dead. Luckily, he's really stupid, so you wait for him to block, and then you just slap him a bunch. Because he doesn't have an option for it, he doesn't have any kind of reaction. But just keep on whipping ass. And there's a lot of resources in this area, but you don't have to grab any of them. What I ended up doing, guys, is I killed everything in this area, got all the resources, and then I went across that amethyst pathway over there, and then I got one shot by an enemy. And of course, the checkpoint is before we've even gone through the spinning areas. So what I'm going to do is when I jump across, after I've cleared all this area, there's going to be a transition of me going to where you're supposed to go, which is just a couple of feet over there where that purple tower is, you know, with the two purple gems on it. And it's just going to mitigate the nonsense. But as you witnessed just then, in this area you're going to get rocks hurled at you by the mini-boss that's coming up later on. And the mini-boss wins the award for being probably the easiest boss in the game that I'm going to fight like an absolute bitch. And it's going to be a wonderful piece of contradictory evidence towards my case. Because I just mentioned about people playing like bitches and making unentertaining videos and popping them on the internet. And the way I fight that boss is completely unentertaining and awful. So look forward to that piece of vacillation of me holding two opposing thoughts, conflicting ideals in my brain, that cognitive dissonance, that wonderful paradoxical hypocrisy that I am going to be lavishing in later on. Whew, that was a big hit. Cheeky bastard. What is this guy doing? You see it though, the moment you hit him, the programmed evade. The moment you touch him, dashes away. Oh, there's another one. Bloody hell, trading with them. That was lucky. Very dangerous. But did you see just then, guys? I did an arcane counter by accident, and it did, what was that, 265 damage? The first hit of my whip did over 300 damage, and that's the weak hit. So that just goes to show that it's not very viable. That's the reason why I don't use them. But this is a really long area with some really interesting stuff in it. The Scar is one of those places that goes on forever, especially if you're having a bad time. I was watching our buddy Darksiders Phil the other day, and it was really funny because I was editing this walkthrough while I was watching, and he had it in his mind that he was at the end of the game when he was at the beginning of this zone. This zone is a really, really long dungeon, then after this there's 2 bosses, so you're not even at the end of the game, really. You're just in the last quarter. So when Phil gets it in his mind that he's at the end of a game, he starts to rush it and he wants it to end. So when it lingers, unwantedly so, he gets really, really miffy with it. It's really funny to watch. So he just kept on reiterating that it goes on forever and that it's really long and that the games journalists were full of shit for saying it was a 12-hour game. And all the general normal things that Phil does if you've ever watched him. And it was just really silly. Because the game is continuing, it's introducing new mechanics, it's doing different things, it's being fun and cool, and all he wants is for it to end. He's just really, really just completely burnt out at that point. He just wants a release from his suffering of having to play video games 4 hours a day while people pay him, sorry. So, I mean, I can't imagine the misery that goes into doing that job for a living. Like, can you imagine how stressed and how pissed off you'd be all the time, guys, if you had to play video games and get money for it? Whew. That'd be a really tough day in Christendom, that one. But this is where the transition's going to happen, guys. I'm going to jump up here, I'm going to pick up the Angel's artifact, and then you see directly in front of me that machine over there with those purple nodules on it? That's where we're going to be now. So if you hit both of those, it's going to spin this, and then once it settles at the end of its rotation, you're going to be able to go to the next area. I've been thinking of an idea for a video, though. I might as well talk as a bit of a tangent as we come over here and do some swinging. Ooh, that's a tangent too that I haven't discussed that I mentioned that I would. So do you see the graphic that happens when you swing? This really bugs me, because it goes against the coherency of the design, in my opinion. If you look at this, let's really get into this, shall we? This is Chris being pedantic over visual elements of Darksiders 3. TM. So, look at the HUD, guys. Bottom left, Nephilim's Respite. You'll notice that there are no hard edges on any of the design there. The hardest of the edges is on the white circle that is surrounding certain areas, and the rest is greyed and opacited and things of that nature. Contrasting colours, white area, grey backgrounds, opacity, right? Look at the bottom right. Bottom right, blue skull with a number. Got a bit of a glow on it, got a bit of an edge with a darker blue. And then look at the map at the top. The map is a like 70% opacity of grey that has a red skull on it pointing to our objective. The red skull has a very fine amount of drop shadow around it, or a stroke to make it pop against the visuals. Subtle, all of these elements have a cohesion to them. They have subtle lines and they have grey and tend to trade towards a bit of opacity, right? And then look at your HP bar. See the difference in design there? It's almost like all of the HUD was designed by somebody who wanted the HUD to look good, and then the HP bar was designed by a kid with a ruler and a fucking marker pen. And it pisses me off because it doesn't fit. It doesn't look like it suits the HUD. It's completely different. The stroke of black around it is too thick, and none of the elements come together to make a coherent design that goes with that bottom left. It just doesn't work for me, and it really pisses me off because it should. UI design is a job that people do that you should be proud of, and there's really cool UIs in games, there's really simple UIs in games, there's UIs that when you break them down, they don't look that impressive, but when you look at them in the context of the game, they do exactly what they need to do and they're awesome. This is not a good example. The top left is completely conflicting with all the other HUD elements, and I don't know why. And this brings me on to the next section. When you whip swing, there is this gaudy looking pink emblem that completely stands out for all the wrong reasons to tell you that you can swing on an object. It doesn't fit the central narrative of the design at all. Do you see when I'm locking onto people, how it puts that kind of... It's almost like a yellow, orangey bat symbol of some sort, an arrow pointing down, and then there is... Notice his HP bar, how it has a green bar and then a greyed edge, but ours doesn't. Our HP bar would look way better like that. Might not pop as much, but then you could add a little bit of a stroke. Don't have to add 50 meters of a stroke, you could just do a couple millimeters, make it pop, looks way better. So, that arrow just then is the symbol of locking onto things in this game, and it makes sense. It's something that Darksiders has done a lot. So why the fuck when you swing on things doesn't it just do a symbol that's similar to that? Similar colour, similar aesthetic, fits in, works exactly as it needs to work because it looks like Darksiders' design. Instead, they have this really weak placeholder object that looks nothing stylistically like anything else in the game. And I don't understand it, guys. It makes no sense to me. They could even have the same icon when you lock on when you throw the glaive. The exact same icon, and it would have stood out better and looked more like Darksiders. And I have no idea why it does it. And you're probably sitting there thinking, wow, this English guy is fussy. And it's true. This is completely innocuous, small and stupid and affects almost nothing in the game. But on a visual perspective, you want your universe to have a very unique visual flair. You want somebody to see an asset from your game and know exactly what it is and where it's from. You don't want to show them something where they go, I don't know what the fuck that is. You want them to go, oh yeah, I see the general thesis of that design. It's clearly a Darksiders asset. And that would make sense. But the game uses this completely strange, random thing that doesn't add anything. And that's the type of stuff that really irks me, guys, because it's the little things. And I mentioned on a video previously that Darksiders itself and its identity was found in the little things, because all of the bigger things that it did were ripped from other games. And those little things matter. And they matter because it adds to this cohesion of design that I keep talking about. And this game doesn't have it. There's no uniformity because it all looks kind of stitched together in this patchwork of elements that clash. And design is a lot like editing, guys. Good elements of design and editing are elements you don't see. You're not supposed to be watching a movie and go, oh my god, that's a great cut. Oh my god, that's a great this. You're not supposed to say that. You might say that because you might have a more analytical brain and you might be an editor yourself or a designer yourself and you might see these things. You know, like, oh, that text is a little bit offset, or there's not enough spaces, or, you know, it should have been double spaced. You know, the real, when you get right down to the, I would say nitty gritty, but apparently it's a racial slur these days. But you know, when you get right into those minute details, the minutiae of the game, the regalia that it wears as its identity, when you get into these factors and you start to notice them, it should always be for a good reason. Like, I'm a notorious person who, I'll be watching something or playing something, and then something will pop up on the screen, and I'll just have a massive fest over the font or something. Like, it'll have a font that just triggers me in the best possible way, and I'll sit there for 5 minutes just being like, that's a good font. Most people will never see that font, because that's not how they look at the game, because they don't look at it with that eye. But the people that do know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's why I want it to be better. And I want it to be better because it deserves to be better, you know? It really does. Like, you see the hit indicator? Even the hit indicator doesn't have that hard, big, dirty black line on it. Doesn't have that random purple icon that the fucking swing does. Like, admittedly, when you lock on, you do get a kind of unusual symbol. It's kind of an orange circle, isn't it? That too clashes a little bit. But you know what doesn't clash? You know the moment before it? Where you press to lock on and your reticle changes? The thing that your reticle changes into looks like a much better symbol for both of those actions, in my opinion. But it's just not what they chose to do. And I'd love to understand why that is. Because do you see just then? Do you see when we picked up that piece of good old Adam Teeny? Did you see that icon, which is the loading icon that rotates around the skull, which is kind of a soft amber circle with glyphs around it? Can you imagine if the icons to lock onto the swings and to lock onto throwing your glaives were that symbol, but maybe simplified a little bit? It would be perfect, because it's a symbol you see every time you save. And that's key to the game. It's the horse's face with the circle. Oh, something I haven't mentioned either. Watch this. I think this is where this happens. Is it going to kill me? Oh, no, it isn't. So, on the moments where you run across those areas and there's the tornado, if the tornado reaches you, you are dead. If the tornado's in a bad position when you start, you are dead. It's a really strange mechanic of running away from an enemy that just instantly kills you when it gets close to you, and sometimes it's super close to you and sometimes it's super far away. So if you're having problems with a tornado, it's probably less to do with you and more to do with your game being a cunt. So just bear that in mind, guys. The tornado mechanic is hilariously silly, and there's a section coming up where I'm going to get killed by it, but I'm going to trigger a checkpoint so it doesn't matter. But here are the puzzles with the blocks where the tornado is involved. The one thing to bear in mind here, guys, is as long as you're using the Force Hollow, you will not die to this hurricane underground. If you don't have this on and you swap to another one, you'll die instantly. So never ever take off the purple form when you're doing these puzzles, outside of the one instance where you have to. Because it just ends badly. And the puzzle that I did just then, that took like 5 seconds, watch Darkside Phil do that puzzle. He got so pissed off at that puzzle, he was asking his chat to solve it, but no one in his chat was playing the game, so nobody could help him, and he was being a pandering little bitch. It was fantastic. Oh, and folks, if you're wondering what that jump just then was, when you enter that corridor, there is a dialogue between you and the Watcher that leads you all the way to Vulgrim's station, so instead of having you suffer through that, I just removed it and crossfaded. This run back coming up is pretty tricky, so be careful here. This corner here has 2 of those iconic enemies from the previous Darksiders, and they can kill you in one hit, so be very, very careful with them. They're an incredibly dangerous creature. And then this leads to a section that I really don't enjoy too much, but I understand it. It's a cool idea, it's really hard when you can't take a lot of damage. So when you step on these particular things, you're going to come up against these dudes who throw things at you, and sometimes they throw things and sometimes they don't. There's no real coherency to them of why they do it and why they don't, but getting on their platform is awkward because they have a tendency to do that. So the only thing you can do when you land is go into a move that has iframes, so activating Havoc or activating Wrath, because you will never land and have chance to dodge that move usually unless he starts it late. And one of the things I've found, whenever you're jumping down at an enemy, they'll start their attack animations perfectly to catch you the moment you land. And you'll spot this when you take on Wrath at the end of this dungeon. Wrath is a boss we've already fought, And he's got a couple extra tricks when we fight him. But you have to jump off a platform to get to him, and the amount of times he'll start an attack as you're falling and hit you the moment you land is really high. And the precision of it, guys, is the type of thing only a robot can do. It's so perfect. It's literally frame perfect, and it makes it really difficult to dodge. So just be very careful of any kind of jumping down or jumping up towards something, because they show immaculate timing. And there's going to be a transition here because I ended up pausing the game for a large amount of time and coming back to it wearing the stasis. But all that happened there is when you hit the switch, it lifted a drill bit and then it gave you this balcony that's going to enable you to access a new shortcut, which is really useful because the checkpoint coming up is the second worst, maybe even the first worst checkpoint in the game. This is a really, really bad checkpoint. So there was the loading section from Vulgrim, and then now we can do the puzzle solving to get to where we need to be. And another transition there of me skipping the walking moment, which is really annoying. There's a nice purple nipple for the people that like to flip those things and get their resources. Boom. The small lurcher cache. Yeah, this following area is really tough. So if you go down to your right there, there's some items, but there's also a mage guarding them. This is one of the hammer fellas who I trade with all the time on this game, and I don't really know why. There's no good reason for it. There's me crushing the healing item. But once you climb through this vent, it's going to leave you out on a conveyor belt. The conveyor belt is something that you can freeze and interact with. And we're going to be doing this entire parade of movement and traversal to get to an area where you have to cross. You have to sit on one of those machines that carry you, those gondolas, all the way through an area filled with enemies to then fight a sub-boss. And the sub-boss kills you in one hit. And because the checkpoint to get to him is really, really garbage, I've never fought him. I've never learnt his moves or his timing. So he might be the easiest guy on the planet, but I will never know because I'm just going to throw my blade at him. So you'll remember at the beginning of the guide, I said the only things I was going to be upgrading are my whip and this weapon that I have on right now. So I believe this weapon's +9. It doesn't do much damage, it must be said. It does okay damage, but it doesn't do as much damage as I would like. And it also does way more damage when I throw it normally than charging it up. The first time I did this section on my first run, I just used the flame one because once you set the boss on fire, he takes ambient flame damage that's like 99999 quite frequently, and it adds up to something like 130 damage. But when I was throwing this normal weapon at the boss, I was doing about 130 damage, so there was no real need to do it. And all I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to throw the glaive at him, and then when I get the wrath meter, I'm going to use the tornadoes of the lightning form, and I'm just going to keep doing that. And all you do is stay at medium distance. Oh, by the way, this is me testing stasis. Watch this. This move he hits me with now is a one-hit kill. Actually, that move might not be a one-hit kill, but he has a one-hit kill move because he's killed me before. But did you see what happened? Because I activated Wrath, my bar took the damage instead of me, and that was the moment when I realised that Stasis is absolutely broken. Absolutely, completely broken. And there's a path down there, but I've never been down there, so that might lead to a checkpoint or all sorts of things. But because I don't like this checkpoint, I didn't want to test it. I think there might be something special down there, maybe a good item, but once again, you give me a shit checkpoint, I'll show you a bitch strategy to end and own all bitch strategies, because that's the kind of player I am, guys. Give me a good checkpoint and I will spend hours trying to do wonderful things. Give me a shit checkpoint and I will pull out every dirty, cheesy tactic that exists, and that's exactly what you're about to watch. So I apologise in advance for this, because this is like 6 minutes of boredom, and this is all you do. This is all you do, guys. He throws rocks at you, and then you dodge them, and then you throw your boomerang at him, and you just keep throwing your boomerang. And I really wish that I'd not activated the Wrath mode to test it in that previous area, because I could have made this a little bit quicker. If he gets close, he has a triple hitting spinning attack that has massive range and tons of active frames, and it can be interesting to dodge. I have dodged it before, but I don't know it well enough, so hence why I'm just going to throw shit at him. So yeah, this is a boring fight, but I'm not angry, you know, I'm not angry about it. There might be a checkpoint I don't know about, and a better run back to it. And if there is, then good on the developers for making that, but I didn't find it. So it's just going to be me getting really mad and being cheesy. And something I find really interesting, this boss has 2 taunts. 2 taunts. He has like one move. One fucking move if you don't go up to him. Throw the rock. Throw the rock. He officially has more taunts than long range options. What a bizarre game, right? His first taunt is a quick one, which if you go to punish it, you can just get hit immediately because you can't get away quick enough, unless you dodge. And once again, I don't know the timing, so I don't bother. And then the other one is a long one. That's the quick one. So if you watch, here comes the hits. Look at the range on this shit. Really big range, right? Terrible damage. And all these moves I've never seen before, so I'm not even going to mess with them. But his other taunt is much longer, and it enables you to get up to him and hit him at least twice if you want to. But this is really effective, you know? It might not be fun to watch or fun to do, and it might take a while, but if you're a patient person, this is a 100% guaranteed winning strategy. I just wish that they didn't fuck you with the mini-bosses so much. Like, on Darksiders 2, the checkpoint would have been when you entered this room. So if he killed you, you could have just started again, and it would have been fine. Darksiders 1 would have done the same thing. This game? Nah. And it doesn't make any sense. Those games are old. You know, old games do things that we can forgive because they were older. They came from a different time where different standards were applicable to design. We're not in those ages anymore. We're in ages now. We're in the accessibility age. Games are so accessible these days that they practically give you a fucking achievement for pressing start. The Simpsons game did that, you know. Like every single thing you do now is so handheld, so pointed, so guided that we don't need help anymore. And then a game like this comes along and just removes all of those safeguards, and it's annoying for no good reason. Like, why do we have to do the biggest run back in the level to get to the boss? There's been some really, really elegant moments of good run back. This isn't one of them. And it really frustrated me. Hence this strategy. But, you know, gotta have a little bit of cheese with all the other stuff, haven't you? It must be said, though, can you imagine if you had the gun right now? The gun would be so much better. The gun fires really fast, and I could just keep nailing him all the time. Another thing you want to watch is when she catches it, when Fury catches it, it slows her down. Which is kind of annoying. It also has terrible range. Terrible range. Terrible lock-on range. Like, why do we even use this weapon? I don't understand. Like in Darksiders 1, it made sense because it was just a boomerang, wasn't it? In this game, they just kind of like throw it in there at the last possible moment, and there's no real use for it. Like, you never use it in an advantageous position when you're fighting because it doesn't complement your combos very well. And I tried launching enemies, throwing the boomerang at them, and then attacking them and stuff, and it just... unimpressive, pretty much. Maybe there's some crazy boomerang tech that I don't know, so if you have any crazy boomerang tech, feel free to share, but I just don't think the game is that way. Like, another thing too, this can actually double hit the boss, but I don't know how. It does it by itself. It'd be great if you could actually make it do that. But I don't know how, so I can't. But one thing that is guaranteed, when you beat this boss, you get an Essence of the Chosen. So if you haven't killed the Flame Warden yet, this is your ability to get a maxed out gem for your weapon. So I would recommend you put that into the Enoch amulet so that you can get the 85% damage when you're at low health. But if you don't want to do that, feel free to put it into whatever it is that you enjoy. I would recommend it so much because when you see me fight Wrath, when you see me fight Pride, and when you see me fight Envy, I'm going to be hitting over 700 damage. 700 damage is a lot. I think I hit for 900 damage on the final boss. Can you imagine those kind of numbers? Those are pretty good numbers. And if you want the bosses to be quick, there's no better way of doing it. And if you've been following my build by just leveling strength and nothing else, you might as well go wholeheartedly into it, because most things at this point are going to kill you anyway. So get that low life, do that massive damage, and then reap the rewards. Another reason why this strategy was better when I was on my other build is because I was generating Wrath a lot quicker, so I could use the lightning move a ton. But I just haven't had the capacity to do it yet, unfortunately. But you're going to see it in a moment once I get it. But see what I mean? This is a really badly designed fight. And there's a lot of fights like this in games. In the Fist of the North Star game that came out recently, there's a boss in that who's my favourite character in the show, called Rao. And if you stay at a distance from him, he does one thing, and you can punish it really easily, and it turns the entire fight into just a bullshit waste of time. But it's super safe. There's no design philosophy in this boss, there's no line of code or programming that makes him think, maybe I should cover the distance. If this was a Souls game, this boss would have a charge attack, and just by sheer virtue of Souls design, it would be really fucking hard to dodge probably, and really fast. But he doesn't have that, so instead, I just throw shit at him for 20 minutes and he dies. So there you go, guys. Terrible strategy, but very effective. Thank you for watching. You take care now.